What's going on, YouTube? OCD for EDC here, and what I've got for your face balls today is a Houge knife. This happens to be the Houge X5. So let's get into it here. We're gonna do a few size comparisons here. So there it is with the Benchmade bug out. So you can see it's quite a bit larger than the bug out. This here is the new Tucson TS127. This one happens to be an S90V blade steel. So there it is against that knife. Now, I'm actually shooting this from a hotel because I'm traveling for work, so I don't have a whole bunch of stuff with me, but I do have a few. And here it is up against the real steel Griffin, or what I like to call the Pordax, if you watched my earlier video. So you can see we're looking at about the same size overall here. And yeah, since I don't have a whole bunch of size representations, we'll throw in, here it is up against the Olight S1R baton. And here it is against, I don't even know what model sack this is, or Swiss Army knife. This is the, I don't remember the number on it. It's the one that's got the fingernail clippers in it. I've carried this for a really long time. So anyway, there you go. I think that does it for size comparisons there. So this is the manual version of the Houge X5, and dimensions here we're looking at overall is 8 1/4, and you got a 4.8 inch handle, overall handle, so you know, measuring from this point here to the very end of the handle. And then you've got a just under a 3.5 inch blade. They call this the 3.5 model. They also make this in a 4-inch blade, but this is the 3.5. All right, so blade length is just under 3.5, like 3.45, and what you've got is a just over 3.3 cutting edge there. So moving back to the handle, from this point right here, so the forward area of this finger choil back to this notch, or this protrusion right here, that is exactly 3 inches. And then you've got 3.9 inches overall, like, grip area. So when you're carrying this knife, you can see it's just a 3-finger grip in this portion here, and then your pinky rests on the back. Now, it does actually work really well. I never really paid attention to Houge much. You know, I knew that they were good quality knives, but I never really handled them, mainly just because I didn't really think that I would like them. You know, it's kind of a somewhat of a polarizing design. You either kind of love it or you don't. But I will tell you that I never really thought much about them. I didn't necessarily dislike them. I just wasn't real excited about the Houge knives. But now having this one in hand and being able to use it for a little while, I'm really, really happy with it. I like it a lot more than I thought I would. So getting through the dimensions here, the blade at its highest point is about 1.25 inches in height, and blade stock here is 145 thousandths. So not crazy thin, but not horribly thick either. So, you know, it's just a little over 3.5 millimeters, so not quite 4 millimeter blade stock. This happens to be the manual flipper version. They also make this in an automatic, and this one here measures right at about 20 thousandths behind the edge thickness, and it is a flat ground blade. You do have some flats here, and then you've got this harpoon section up here. So this guy's a little poony, and as far as I'm concerned, every guy loves a little poon, right? So the handle thickness, it actually tapers. So from back here in the back of the knife, at its narrowest point is 0.44 inches, and then at its widest point up here is 0.58. So it does taper towards the pivot of the knife, but it makes it really, really comfortable in hand. And you've got these scalloped areas here, and that works out really well for your finger to lay in there. It's really, really comfortable in hand. And the fact that Houge was best known for making gun grips, it really shows in this design. It's kind of, like I said, it's kind of a polarizing handle design. However, when you get it in hand, it's a lot more comfortable than I ever expected it would be. The pocket clip on this guy, it does ship with 2 pocket clips, so it is reversible for tip up, right or left carry. And the pocket clip, it does have quite a bit of retention, so it's not to a point where you can't get it in and out of the pocket. You can, and the ramp on it's good. You've got enough clearance under there for your pants material, so that all works out really well. But it is a little stiff, and maybe after some more carry it'll loosen up a little bit. But it's not terrible. It's just I'm kind of nitpicking there, really. The flipping action on this knife is fantastic. It rockets out every single time. And I am going to disassemble this knife, so you'll be able to check it out. But the quality that this knife has, just the build quality, the design, the way they manufactured everything is just really, it's stellar. It really is. There is an internal detent on this knife, so they're not using the button as a detent, which is really great. So one of the things on that does for the action, so this knife will just drop to this point right here, and you'll see this when I disassemble, but then it gets kind of stiff and you gotta push it through to get it over the detent. Now you can whip it closed like that right there, and that works, but if you just want to let it fall, it's going to stop right in that location, and then you'll have to push it the rest of the way, or grab it with your fingers. But anyway, we will weigh this thing here real quick. So I gave you the dimensions of this guy, and let me move that so there's no glare. So what we're looking at, basically 4.8 ounces. And, it's not overly heavy. I know that, 4.8 ounces isn't anything stellar for a 3.5 inch blade. But for this knife, I feel like looking at the size of it, it's a little more robust than a lot of 3.5 inch knives. So I feel like the weight is what you would expect. You don't pick it up and think, oh man, that thing's heavy. As a matter of fact, I think it's probably lighter than what it appears to be. When you look at it, it just looks like it's kind of a beast. But yeah, super comfortable in hand. So let's get into tearing this guy apart here. So what you've got for hardware up here on the pivot, this is a T10 hardware here, and let me see it's this side here. Okay, and then you've got these 3 body screws here that just screw into the aluminum. So these are 6061 T6 aluminum that are hard anodized, and then these body screws are T8 hardware. And all the machining on this knife is spectacular. This thing is really fantastic. I'm just super impressed with the build quality on this knife and just the overall way this knife was put together. Now, if you look at these screws here, you can see how, because of that taper that I was telling you about, the fact that it goes from 580 thousandths down to 440 thousandths, you can see that reflected in the screws here. So you've got a couple longer screws and then a shorter one at the tail of the knife. So we'll set those off to the side here. All right, so let's get this guy taken apart right there. All right, so as you can see, this thing does not have any washers. There's the spring for your button lock. And like I said, this thing does not have any sort of washers that it rides on. Here's the button there. Pretty standard fare for a button lock. You got the spring cup there. And then on the one side, you've got the cup here that the spring sits down into and the button slides in. You've got your blade stop pin there, and then you've got this is actually a threaded hole that they must use for the fixturing when they make these scales. You can see here there's some writing on it. It says EX-05-35-C. So yeah, and then here's the side that's got everything going on. So you've got these two locating pins in the back here, which is really fantastic for just keeping everything nice and square and straight. And then you do have this lock here, and I'll try to manipulate it from the bottom side so you can see it covers up the hole right here. When the knife is deployed, you can put that lock out so you can't accidentally fold the knife. And then you've got your blade stop here, pivot screw, and then here's your detent. And you can see, if I can show it off there, there's an area underneath this portion of the detent that is milled out, and you've got a detent ball there. And so this arm, you know, from out in this area, this arm flexes and puts spring pressure against the blade. And so that's what your detent ball track looks like right here. So as you can see, it starts to get shallower and shallower until it finally lands in that little hole there. So this is in the closed position, and then this is in the opened or deployed position. So, you know, I really like the way they did this. It's just really well done. It's well thought out. And like I said, the construction on this guy is just fantastic. You know, all the components, all the hardware, everything about this knife is just really, really well put together, well thought out, and the machining on it is spectacular. Just really, I just couldn't be happier with the quality on this knife. So anyway, let's put her back together here. And like I said, you know, this thing does not have any sort of washers or anything, so you've just got these raised areas right here that the blade runs on. And so I am going to put just a little bit of oil on this top side here before this goes back together, just because it was a little bit dry there. It was pretty good on the bottom side. So let's see if we can't get this thing together here. Put this button in. So with button locks, it's really the best way to do it is you got to kind of lift the blade up a little bit to get the button in at the same time. And then once you got the button in, I always drop the spring in like so. And then we got the locating pins, all that's good. The one thing I didn't show off, I guess, is the pivot on this knife. It does have a D-shaped pivot, so it is a captured pivot, which is a really nice deal. And you know, like I said, the hardware on this guy is just really, really well done. And yeah, I will definitely be checking out some more Houge stuff in the not so distant future. Like I said, I just had not really paid much attention to them, and yeah, kind of wrote them off just based on aesthetics and looks. I wasn't, like I said, you know, a huge fan of the aesthetics of this knife. But now that I got one in hand, man, I really impressed with this knife. So this one here I actually picked up. I don't know if you guys saw. This was several weeks ago. Old LTK had a knife sale, and I picked this one up from him. He had it sitting there on his table, and I figured, what the heck, it was a good price. Speaking of price, this thing ranges depending on the model that you purchase, the color and whatnot. Like I said, this thing does come in an automatic variant. This is obviously the manual flipper, but the manual flipper ranges whether you get the 4-inch or the 3.5, and then based on color, they range from like around 175 up to like 225, depending on which model you're looking at. So as you can see, we're perfectly centered. And let's see. Oh, I got her way too tight. Back that off a little bit here. All right, now I'm a little bit too loose. Got just the tiniest bit of blade play. All right, so it drops. Oh yeah, solid as a rock. So this thing, when it's adjusted correctly, there is just absolutely no play at all in any direction. Just a super solid knife. So like I was saying, the price on this guy can range from like 175 to 225. As far as I know, most all of them have the same blade steel. As you can see, this is an Allen Elishewitz design, and they all come in CPM 154. As far as I know, I might be wrong on that. Just the ones that I have seen are in CPM 154, which I feel like is a really good blade steel. I'm really happy with the performance on this guy. One of the other things that I really like about this knife is this stone wash finish on the blade. The stone wash is just super well done, and this thing is just glassy smooth. And there's just no variation at all in that blade. I mean, sometimes you'll see like little rub marks and stuff where the stone wash just looks a little inconsistent. This is just super well done on the harpoon. All the edges that are not supposed to be sharp are really well chamfered. And this thing's so glassy smooth, it just almost makes it feel soft. It's pretty impressive. Just a really nice finish on the blade. And then, the hard anodizing is just really nicely done. I've carried this thing quite a bit over the last, 3 or 4 weeks or whatever I've had it. And I mean, there's just zero signs of wear. It's I don't know how long this finish will hold up exactly, but I'm pretty impressed that, I honestly can't find any little scratch marks on it at all, which I'm kind of shocked by, because I haven't necessarily been, trying to keep it super nice. I've just thrown it in my pocket and just let it ride. You got this kind of milled out area where your finger lands, for flipping. Super comfortable. And like I said, just really exceeded my expectations. And yeah, really fantastic. I couldn't be happier with how much I enjoy this knife. And it was really just kind of a surprise. It's my own dumbass fault for not paying attention to Houge sooner, but I am now. So I guess I've got no one to blame but myself. So anyway, guys, there it is, the Houge X5 Manual Flipper. If you're at all interested in one, I say go for it. They're a pretty cool knife, and I think everybody needs to try one out for sure. All right, guys, that'll wrap it up for tonight. Thanks a lot. Have a good one.